So there we go in round 43. Megafish is back up and running.
Back up, and this time we're not expecting to see, since they did replace the problematic service, we're expecting to see it come back up, and sure enough, yeah, we're not seeing diminished availability across other services. And finally, those
You're finally going to get those
they're
points.
going to get those points. They've been for 3 rounds now trying to get those, but this is the one that's going to do it.
They're scoring pretty solidly on this challenge. Nobody
That's
else
a good one too. They were the only one,
it.
and even though that they were throwing that POV earlier, no one else was able to detect that and either patch to defend against it or replay it against other competitors as well.
Yeah, that's pretty good showing for them. And their score is back up in the running.
Yeah, still with those 3 services down.
Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully that didn't hurt them too bad.
We know Megafish took a hit, so let's see the results. And sure enough, the scoreboard definitely shows it. That big dip right there. So that's that outage absolutely cost them. And of course, the difference in score, we've got a pretty big margin. Remember, they were only, how many was it before? They were pretty close to second place before.
They were 300 points behind Zandra.
Yeah, only 300 points. And now, unfortunately, 5,000 points difference there. And there's still over 9,000 points between Xander and Mayhem as well. So a little bit of a gap there, but much more of a spread now in the top 3 than we had before.
Now I want to take a look at the mail server challenge. This is one of the rematch challenges. Everyone's kind of been waiting for us to talk about this.
And we don't call it mail server.
Okay.
We call it
Crack Adder. Yeah. So this challenge had a vulnerability in it. It's a vulnerability in SendMail. It's been around for a very long time. And in 2011, Halvar Flake had a presentation and brought it up as something that program analysis was just not able to solve because of the nature of the bug, and kind of threw down the gauntlet and said, hey, we've got to get better at program analysis. We've got to be able to statically analyze and find these types of bugs.
That was the original, right? But then Halvar had his own smaller, kind of more optimized version of it, right?
Yeah, so his example that he used as the sort of distilled down essence of the bug, that was only about 60 lines long, and even that was something that was too complex for static analysis to handle because of the state space explosion problem. The parsing loop was so deep, there was just no way to get at it with a modern system. But what we've done here is kind of gone back to the original. This is not as simplified as Halvar's version. It does have more of the components from the original Crack Adder function from SendMail. It's not exactly the same. One thing that we'll see that's different is I used some ASCII characters instead of the angle brackets and things like that. I didn't want any of the teams to have a leg up.
Well, and part of that comes from the edicts sort of the organizers and the rules for challenge binary authors to not recreate public protocols, right? We didn't want teams to have a sort of head start or a leg up just because they happen to be good with email or HTTP or any existing protocols.
Yeah,
it had to be
definitely.
fresh. So even though this code is very, very similar in the structure and the state and the flags and pointer tracking, the actual protocol itself looks different.
Yeah, it's important to point out, maybe if it's not obvious to people, but every challenge that was written for this game is original code. It's using original protocols, and every single vulnerability is a zero-day vulnerability. We went to great lengths to keep all this code secret before the competition.
And it looks like we have some data. Basically, Megafish was the only team to actually successfully POV against our version of Crack Adder. So this basically represents a leap forward in program analysis. For them to be capable of doing this means that we're one step closer to that thing that's basically been sort of the Everest of program analysis because of that state machine problem.
So behind the scenes, the scores come out. We say, oh, Megafish scored on Crack Adder.
Great. Maybe. Yeah.
Can we double check that?
Yeah.
Was it an unintended vulnerability? Did you accidentally put a stack buffer overflow at the beginning?
Because we did see a large number of the vulnerabilities were not necessarily the one the author intended. For the vast majority of the competition, that's perfectly fine. That's as intended. We know that humans can't write perfect code. That's why we had it in the first place. But for this one, we really wanted it to be real.
You guys successfully patched Crack Adder, but I believe you also were the only one to exploit it, right? And so congratulations. That's pretty. Halvar Flake actually considered this like the Everest, as Vizzy calls it, of challenges. Congratulations. What do you think about this?
It's pretty overwhelming.
Right?
Wow. I mean, all the talk about state machines and all the possibilities of state machines really reminds me of one of the papers that we published recently. We're an academic lab. We publish papers. That's what we do. We published the paper Driller, which is supposed to augment fuzzing with symbolic execution. And it's one of our really in-depth case studies talks about how exactly it traverses the state machines and is able to really explore deeply parts of the program that would normally be inaccessible to a more naive approach.
So I see good news here at the end. We see a crash at the end, so that means potentially that they succeeded. And then more importantly, yes, we see that from the results field there in the API, we know that we're getting a successful POV against the reference. We saw the depth, so we know this scored against everybody. So well done, Mecafish.
That was so exciting because I've worked so hard on this system, and to know that we can do stuff that no other team can, even if we didn't win, that's an awesome feeling. It's great.